The Kansas City Royals find themselves back in the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. Let's preview the series against Baltimore and reflect back on the series that was right here on the KC Sports Authority podcast. Chris, Keegan Russell here with you on the KC Sports Authority podcast. And let's just take a moment, take a deep breath, relax, because the Kansas City Royals are back into the Major League Baseball playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. I mean, just
It's,
let that sink in.
dude, insane. Only the second team ever to come off a season where they lost over 100 games and made the playoffs, man. Like, even the most optimistic Royals fans couldn't think they would be here right now.
Exactly. And up until 7 days ago, we were going, oh my gosh, they're about to play their way
They,
out of the playoffs. And yet here we are at the end of the season, technically, half a day left of baseball. But the Royals did what they needed to do to lock up a wild card spot. And thanks to Detroit securing the number 2 wild card spot and going into Baltimore for a 3-game series starting Tuesday. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let's reflect back on the season, though. I mean, obviously, 7 months ago, towards the beginning of the season, we're sitting here talking about small chance of the playoffs. We would feel pretty good that they just go 500 and the Royals end up finding a playoff spot. So I think if you go all the way back to the beginning of the season, obviously the season's tremendous success, way more than what we anticipated. But just give me your thought as you look back at the season as a whole, now that it's complete, playoffs regardless, just reactions to the season.
shout out to the Twins for collapsing
Yep,
anyone,
thank you.
and shout out to the White Sox for also deciding to be the worst team in MLB history, also helping the Royals get here. So wouldn't be here out with those two division teams. Thank you. But behind that, it really I mean, there's three things, and everyone that's watched the Royals knows those three things. We're going to start with Bobby. I mean, literally the best season by a Royal ever, and that includes the year George Brett hit 390. Like, he did everything, but the power, the hits, stolen bases, and the defense, best gonna win the Gold Glove. Like, it's a shame that Aaron Judge had to have the season he had, and I understand that there's some level of an argument, like Bobby was the catalyst of the 106 Royals team turnaround, like yada yada yada. Doesn't really matter because Aaron Judge is on a list with only Barry Bonds and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Like, you're gonna win the MVP. Doesn't mean Bobby wasn't incredible. Doesn't mean Bobby didn't have an amazing season. He's just not gonna have that hardware to go with it. Second, Salvi. I mean, 34 years old, coming off a down year in 2023 to where it looked like he was starting to age a little bit. Was kind of a black hole there down the stretch. Best catcher in the league offensively anyway. I mean, there's a few other guys up there, but just the resurgence, the consistency. He's still Salvador Perez in the sense, like, there are going to be some bad stretches. There's going to be some swing and misses on some sliders, but overall, everything else he was able to do. The clutch, I think he finished top 10 and average with runners in scoring position. Nearly hit 30 homers. Like, Salvi is number two. Having those two in the lineup really helped an offense that really needed it. And then third, and probably the most important, the starting pitching, man. Like, the starting pitching, we knew it was going to be better. I mean, it couldn't be any worse after 2023. But got to get a whole year of Reagans and the excitement that he had after the glimpse in 2023. You signed Walker, you signed Lugo. I was actually a little down on the Lugo signing at the time. I'm not going to lie. 1 year as a starter, 34 years old. I didn't have high expectations. Dude's going to finish like third in the Cy Young behind Scooble and Burns. So, like, blew the doors open there. Reagan's continued his dominance. Singer has a nice bounce back. And then it didn't even matter who was in that fifth spot, whether it was Lorenzen at time, Marsh at times, Daniel Lynch once or twice. They all performed when their number was called. That starting rotation with a limited offense was really needed. And I'm giving them the number one reason why the Royals are in the playoffs, even though Bobby's coming off like a 10-war season.
Absolutely. I mean, the starting rotation, I think over half of their starts as a total were quality starts, which is impressive. You had 3 guys that were top 10 to top 15 in ERA. Um, Cole Reagans is 1 start away from leading the American League in strikeouts. So, yeah, tip of the cap to JJ Picoult in this offseason that they had going into the year, signing all these guys, bringing Reagans over last year, putting together a pitching rotation that was top 3 in baseball for sure. And then, of course, Bobby, yeah. Had the guy gotten to maybe 40 home runs, another 5 or 6 more stolen bases, then yeah, I think that conversation is a little bit tighter between him and Judge. But 58 home runs by Judge, leading the league in RBIs, you know, don't let that take away from the season Bobby Witt had, because that was an impressive season. Salvador Perez looked great this year. It definitely helped that he had a guy in Freddie Fermin that was more than reliable at catcher a lot of times this year. Yeah, the Royals, they ended up having a tremendous year. Salvador Perez finishes top 10 in the major leagues in RBIs, top 7 in the American League. So you have two guys in the top 10. Had Vinny not gotten hurt down the stretch, I feel pretty confident all three would have finished top 15 at the least, and all three would have been top 10 in the American League. And that was really the talk all year. It was those three. Those three guys were driving this team with the pitching, and more times than not, that kept you in games. Yeah, we went through stretches where the bullpen struggled, and then we went through stretches where they looked really good. Lucas Urseg was fantastic here down the stretch, getting him. That's huge. And this season as a whole, I mean, I think also we need to talk about Matty Q, why he should be the AL Manager of the Year, which is probably still going to go to Stephen Voigt up in Cleveland, but taking them from 106 losses to a playoff team in one season and being one of the top 6 teams in run differential throughout the year, a lot of that's got to go to the coaching staff and Matty Q. So props to everybody all around. Heck of a season. I think a better season than most any of us could have dreamt for this year. This was supposed to be all right, we can see the signs moving forward to getting back to playoff caliber baseball. And, John Sherman said it in last year that, Dayton Moore always talked about putting together a championship baseball team. And he was like, I just want to know what a wild card team looks like. And
There
John,
we go.
you got your wish. You got wild card baseball. Unfortunately, it's not here in Kansas City necessarily to start things off, but we got wild card baseball coming up. Royals, um, Orioles game one Tuesday afternoon. Cole Reagan's on the mound, the ace of the staff. You could argue Reagan's, Lugo, heck, even Waka could go out game one, but you got your best guy on the mound against their best guy, Corbin Burns. Two teams that I think are very similar positions to each other. The Orioles were down for a couple years after their early mid 20 teens run, and they've restocked and reloaded with a lot of good talent, and two teams that really took a major jump this year. Orioles were decent last year, and then they just really took off this year. So it's going to be an exciting series. I think it's going to be one of the more fun to watch series in all the playoffs, just because you got two studs in Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. squaring off. We all remember what happened last time we were in Baltimore for the playoffs, and how well that went for us. So super excited about that. So let's talk a little bit about the playoffs here. Let's go to this series. Just early thoughts on the matchup itself. You had a couple teams coming down the stretch here that we could have paired off with. Houston being one of the other ones. Is this the matchup you prefer, and how do you see us faring against the Orioles?
Yeah. This is the matchup I wanted. Uh, no disrespect to Baltimore, they're a very talented team, young and hungry. You don't want to go against the Chiefs version of baseball, which is what the Houston Astros are. Like that's what you're asking. Like they're the 3 seed. Okay, well that was the Chiefs were the 3 seed last year, and we saw how that worked out. So like, wanted to avoid them at all costs. Then, I mean, it's baseball. Who knows what's going to happen? But that was a big reason. Another part, the Royals just match up better with Baltimore. Like the Royals cannot hit left-handed pitching. The Astros are going to have 2 starters. The Orioles are going to throw out 0. They're all 3 going to be righties. That's a big win. I think that there's a little bit of a nervous energy in Baltimore, which Houston's not going to have. They've been here, done that. Baltimore won over 100 games last year. We're in the ALDS. They were taking on the Rangers, and they got swept. The first 2 in Baltimore, and then went to Texas. Texas sweeps. That's 8 straight games that the Orioles have. The Orioles have not won a playoff game since 2014. The Tigers, and to advance the ALCS, and we all know what happened in the ALCS in 2014.
Swept.
The Orioles, so they have not won a playoff game since then. So there's going to be a little bit of that pressure. They took a step back, kind of stumbled down the stretch. While the Royals are playing with house money, I get it. They also stumbled down the stretch, but again, the pressure is not there for these guys. They just go out, play some ball, and I just really like the fact that the bullpen isn't as good either. Like Houston has Sir Anthony Dominguez, who's fine, he has some playoff experience with the Phillies. outside of that, the rest of the relievers are kind of struggling. Their names you're not going to really know. So I like how it worked out. Again, doesn't mean the Royals are going to win, but like just on paper, it looks so much more appeasing than appealing
Yeah.
than.
Yeah. So let's talk some headlines coming into this wild card series. I want to start first with Bobby Wood Jr., the new face of the franchise, the young gun. He's got a guy in Salvador Perez next to him who's been there, done that, World Series MVP, two World Series appearances. But now this is our first glance at Bobby Wood Jr. in playoff baseball mode. What should we expect from this star of not just the Royals, but one of the stars of the major league game as a whole in his first playoff series?
Bobby has never given me a reason to doubt him. I mean, his first game, he had a walk-off hit. His second game, he made the defensive highlight. His first time in the home run derby, he came feet away from winning it. Like, dude, every time you thrust him into the spotlight, he handles it like a bleeping champ. And like, I expect the same. I expect him to go out there, play hard, play what he always does. Man, struggling a little bit late, but um, just be the best player in baseball, be the best five-tool athlete. Like, I don't know if that means he's going to be hitting homers or whatnot, but I think he's going to cause some havoc on the bases when he gets on. I think he's going to show some dazzling defense, and I really expect him to put on a show for however long this playoff run lasts.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for it. I think all of Kansas City's excited to see not only his first playoff series, but hopefully first of many, many more to come. You said it. The guy never seems to croak under pressure. He's always got a big moment in a game. Even if he goes 0 for 4 in a game, which is very rare, he still finds a way to get it done on the defensive side to make a big impact. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I was thinking about this series, and I wanted to ask you this too. Who would you say the 5 best players are in this matchup?
The 5 best players in this matchup.
And then what basically I want to ask, because I'm curious to see how many of them are on the Orioles versus the Royals in this series.
Yeah, it's crazy because so obviously Bobby, but then I think I would go Gunner, Burns, Reagan's, Santander. I think Lugo's really close. Adley, who's struggled down the stretch, is obviously up there. Salvy's obviously up there. I think Santander and Reagan's are fighting for that fifth spot, and I think I'm gonna give it to Santander because dude, that hit for
He
over
can mash.
that mash switch hitter. Like, I get it. Lugo had the maybe statistically better season than Reagan's. Reagan's is a lefty with 223 strikeouts. That's just like dog. So I'm sorry, Seth. We need you in game two, but I think he's going to be out on the outside looking in at that. But it's really close.
Yeah. I was just curious your thoughts on that to see how much of an impact that might play. Because I think for me, baseball tends to be one of those sports where it doesn't always matter who's got the most talented players. I mean, we've seen the Angels and Mike Trout have the most talented player in baseball and just be wasted away. So yeah, I was just curious what your thoughts were on the stars on each side and who kind of has the edge there.
It's really close towards the top 10, like a lot of back and forth Royals, Orioles. I think the Orioles take the lead on depth. Like, you're going to want a Colton Cowser. You're wanting over probably a Michael Massey, same with
Yeah,
Jordan Westburg. Like,
their 1 through 9 is a little bit stronger.
yeah, he goes a little deeper, but like star power, their best five against the Royals' best five matches up pretty evenly. So, and sometimes that's what it comes down to in these postseason games is do the stars perform?
In one of those Royals best 5 we gotta talk about, and that's Vinny Pasquantino, who, as of Monday, is gonna be taking live batting practice, and if things go well, there's a chance he is activated for this series, and I think 4 weeks ago, again, that never would have crossed our minds that he'd be available for this series, let alone any part of the playoffs, so we gotta talk about it. What's your thoughts on Vinny's recovery and the likelihood we see him in this series?
Dude's a reptile or something if he's playing. Like, I mean, he's just healing so fast. He was taking live BP. I
Hit
feel
a
like
hit a home run off the tee the other day.
yeah. Well, Thursday he was taking live BP against the machine and
Yeah,
and
machine beeping. Yeah,
and was hitting it. And then Saturday he did it against Will Smith in Atlanta after the celebration. So like fans actually got to see that BP. And then he's going to take it again tomorrow. And it sounds like if he clears enough boxes on the doctor's end, where the doctors are like check, 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 then it comes down to him. He's gonna play. So like what's the worst that can happen? He re-injures it, and it's still just a thumb injury he has all off season. We're not talking about like knees or anything to where he's at threat of missing the start of next year or anything like that. So like I think there's a pretty good chance. Now he won't be able to play first. For those of you that watch the Royals games, heard Rex Hudler probably talking about this a little bit. Rex also had a similar injury with his thumb. Could not catch the ball. Like it just
Mm.
hurts too much. But he said it didn't hurt too much when he swung. And Vinny's, even though he hasn't spoken on it himself, Vinny hasn't. The kind of early indication is similar with how much he's been swinging the bat. So like, I honestly, and again, 2 days ago I would have said no chance, and now I'm like expecting him to be hitting third on Tuesday. Like that's just insane.
Basically, and Yuli Gurriel's been, I think, pretty decent at first instance, and we've seen Salvi play at first too. So I think we can handle the first base defensive side there just enough with that experience. But yeah, getting Vinny's bat back would be huge, major catalyst, strengthens the lineup even better. I mean, we've seen the last 4 to 5 weeks how much the offense fizzled out losing his bat, and how there really wasn't an answer in the three spot for a lot of that stretch. So getting his bat back would be huge in whatever fashion it can be, even if he's not, if he's swinging 75%, maybe that 75% is enough to get the opposing pitcher just to think a little bit more about what he's throwing them. And again, lengthens that lineup a bit, takes some pressure off of Bobby and Salvi. So that would be great to get him back. Now that leads me into, if he does get activated, let's talk about what this active game day roster might look like. Who stays? Who probably gets to the chopping block, and what that looks like. Let's start with the pitching side, though. We already know Reagan's, Lugo, Walker are probably going to be your 1 through 3. We've seen that Singer and Marsh are going to be coming out of the bullpen, and Lorenzen. I guess Marsh is one of the ones we should talk about. Question mark. So give me your thoughts on here. How are the numbers going to even out? How many position players? How many pitchers? And who are the guys on the outside looking in?
Okay.
Potentially on the outside.
Yeah. So the roster's at 28 right now, with being September. They've been rocking 28. Got to get down to 26 for the postseason. With when you throw Vinny into the mix, that means 3 players need to be taken off the roster. It's not like you're DFAing them or cutting or anything like that. They just won't be available for the wild card. Then
Mm.
you come out with a different roster if you advance and so on and so forth. So you're not set in stone outside of these 3 games with this roster. That being said, Marsh threw 77 pitches on Sunday in the final game. Like, you don't have that much pitching, and he probably wouldn't be able to go till Wednesday anyway, so why
Mm.
waste the spot? So, like, Marsh, I expect him to probably be on a playoff roster if the Royals advance situation. He's not going to be on it. So there's one easy one. I think they really like the 15 position players they have. Matt could, like, again, we can talk about Frazier, Hampson, Grossman. We can have fun with them all day, but at the end of the day, Quatrero likes them, likes having those options to go to. So I think if they can, they're going to try to stay at 15 position players, because again, you don't need as much pitching in a 3-game wild card series. You only need 3 starters. You're moving 2 long men and Singer and Lorenz into the bullpen. You're going to be throwing Urseg and Bubic in every day if you can, if it comes to that. So you don't need as much pitching. I think Daniel Lynch is the odd man out. I thought he had a chance to make the roster. Then Zerpa came back and looked really good. Like, they throws 99. He was controlling his pitches. He hasn't allowed a run since he came back in the middle of September. So like, I think Zerpa takes that left-handed spot from Lynch. Again, Lynch may be needed down the stretch. He's been phenomenal. Like, just because you didn't make this roster doesn't mean you aren't deserving of it. It's just a
Mm.
numbers crunch. So there
Yeah, and
goes.
you really don't need 3 lefties out of the pen
Don't need
necessarily.
4. Yeah, because you have Zerpa, Bubic, and Long. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing with Lynch? Sorry, buddy. Like, again, great bounce back. Hope we can see it more. Not going to need you for the wild card. Then that's when Vinny comes into play. You can't have 16 position players. So activated, one of them has to be cut. And obviously, again, people are hoping it's Frazier, hoping it's Hampson, hoping it's Grossman. I think it's going to be DeYoung, because and my reasoning behind that is the left field in Baltimore. We know what DeYoung brings. It's power. It's drive. It's leaning into one and taking it over the fence. Baltimore has the deepest left field in baseball, and it's not even close. So if you're weak one of his strengths, why would you have him on the roster? Like, we can, again, Michael has the lowest OPS of all qualified hitters in baseball. Let's just keep it
That
at
is
that.
not good.
But he's a good base runner. He's a good defender. He allows you to do a lot of other things. While DeYoung's main strength is sapped by the left field wall. I think they like Hampson late against the left, or I think they like Grossman late against the lefty. Frazier, they like his versatility and the professional at bats he pulls up. That's where my head is at. Is that
Frazier's also got the familiarity of playing there, of
in
course, too.
Baltimore?
So there's
Yeah,
no way you sit him.
you saw what he did in Pittsburgh when he came back.
Yeah.
So to keep that same energy in
Wild card hero right there. Adam Frazier leads us to the divisional series.
hey, you never know if it was
Someone's got to step up.
the Nationals, he would have earned that, with the hit he had the other day. But yeah, keep it short. To summarize, Marsh, Lynch, and DeYoung, if Vinny is activated, are my three missing the playoff roster.
So if Vinny somehow doesn't get activated for this series, does that change any order of that for you offensively?
I think they start thinking about if they need Lynch or not. Like I think it's a conversation, but I really do think they like having 15 hitters. So
And
I'd really
what's your with Vinny back? What's your expected 1 through 9 lineup for Game 1 against Corbin Burns?
So it's all three righties. So I expect a similar lineup, all three. There's really only one question mark I have in it, but it's going to go Fam, who's going to play left or right, depending on what we'll get to. Bobby, Vinny, Salvi, Massey. Those have to be your first five. Like no ifs, ands, or buts without it. This is where it gets interesting. If they want to play MJ, I think Gurriel hits sixth, MJ hits seven. Um, Michael hits eighth and Isbell hits ninth. If they want to play Renfro, and here's the thing, I honestly would play MJ. And it has nothing to do with Renfro. It has everything to do with I don't trust Tommy Pham again in that left field. Like that left field is giant. Tommy's made some great defensive plays recently. Part of the reason they look so good is because he doesn't move very fast out there.
Yeah.
MJ, love him or hate him, and I know a lot of you hate him, is way more athletic to be able to handle that, has way more speed to be able to handle that. Sure, he takes terrible routes at times too, and he's not always the most confident outfielder. I still think I want him in left over Tommy. So by default, Renfro gets to the bench. Gurriel gets bumped up to the sixth spot behind Massey, then MJ in the seventh spot, Michael in the eight, Isbell in the nine. Oh,
Is
by
there a yeah? Is there a likely scenario that MJ starts in left and Renfro starts in right and Fam's not starting?
no, Fam is going to start.
Yeah,
They like
that's what I
much.
figured.
I mean, again, he's kind of gone on a skid recently too. But as you've seen with this organization, they stick with the guys they like, and they've fallen in love with Fam in the short amount of time he's been here.
So then, other scenario, Vinny's not on the team. What's that 1 through 9? What changes for you there?
Both MJ and Renfro start.
Both, yeah.
I think Fam DHs. Um, you still want Gurriel first. Fermin does not deserve a spot on this lineup right now.
Yeah, he's been cold down the stretch.
Um, so yeah,
What about Blanco?
Blanco should not start.
Yeah, he's going to be a bench guy. He's looked good in his spot starts. I'll say that, but yeah,
Some
he's too much of a weapon off the bench late.
he's being carried by two starts in Cincinnati and that one start and for the against the Angels.
Yeah.
Where are those two teams playing next week? So
So let's break down Tuesday night game 1, which is probably going to be the toughest game of the series because you're going against one of the 5 best pitchers in the American League, Corbin Burns. What do we need to see in this game for the Royals to come out with a victory? And then kind of walk me through what you foresee on the pitching side for the Royals, how deep Reagan's might go, and then what that transition into the latter half looks like.
Yeah, I was looking at the radar just because I was curious. Tuesday's the only day that they're thinking it's going to be below 70 with some rain in the forecast right now. Like as of right now, it said like 90% chance of rain. I don't know if that's early in the day, late in the day, but early indication is it may not be the best hitting day. So buckle up because you got two of the best 5 pitchers in the American League going head to head. So I fully expect game 1 to be who can do the little things better? Who can hit the cutoff man? Who can, be the team to take the extra base, move a runner over, do those little things that leads to a run. And if the Royals can do that, which when they're playing well, they do better than anybody. And so if they can just accomplish that, they could pull out a 3-1, 3-2 kind of win. When it comes to what I expect from Reagan's, he started against Baltimore twice this year, both back in April, such a long time ago, but it is when the buzz started to come on this team. It might be something with how well and how close they played Baltimore earlier in the season, even though they did lose 4 out of 6. He went 6 and a third innings of no run baseball in Kaufman, or excuse me, in Baltimore. Now, when the Orioles came to Kaufman, he struck out the side in the first, but can't get through the second inning. They're just getting singles, and it really just felt one of the where the Babbitt gods for those balls batted in play
Yeah.
averages didn't go his way. Just kind of kept snowballing. Really, only Anthony Santerre hit a ball hard that whole one, but it led to 7 runs. He got pulled early. Orioles fans are going to be living on that start, but as we all know, that's not Cole Reagan. Cole Reagan's is closer to what we saw the first time he faced, and I really do expect him to go until he can't, because we like Urseg a lot. I like Bubic and Long at times. I like how Zerpa and Schreiber have looked at times. I don't really want them in the situation unless they have to be, the wheels are just starting to fall off. He's at like 110 pitches. Like, I want him to go 6 or 7. I want him to go as long as he can. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know if that's how Q's going to manage. Normally in these playoff games, we see stars with short leash, 4 innings, third time through the lineup, get him out. I want Reagan's to go 3 times through the lineup at least.
Yeah, he's still the best arm you have there. So why not? If he's looking good
You're right.
through two, and he's dealing with Corbin Burns on the other side, why not keep him out there? Because you do have enough in that bullpen now with moving some starters there to make up for it if he's struggling come fifth, sixth inning. But I know the other thing you see too in playoff baseball is I mean, we've already seen it down the stretch with Ursig getting 2 out or 2 inning saves and 2 inning appearances. So there's a good chance that you see him game one for 2 innings. Can he keep that up through a 3-game series back to back to back nights? If we win first one or drop the first one, and we go into a game 3 scenario, how much can we tax a guy like Ursig? Because obviously he's the best. He's the best arm coming out of that bullpen. Not that I don't trust Bubic or Sam Long or Zerpa or whoever else is coming out of there as much, but he is the best arm out there. So, like, what do we got to do to keep him solid enough that if this goes 3, you can rely on him to get it done?
So I don't know if this is how Q will manage. How I would manage is throw everything at game one. Like a perfect world is Reagan's goes 7, or say goes 2, and you get
Yeah.
out of the 3-2 win and you call it a day. That's how I would manage, is like, just if Ursik needs to go 2 innings in the first game, you don't worry about game 2. Now, once game 2 happens, to say the Royals have won, if you lose game 1, you manage that same way in game 2, obviously.
Yep.
If you win game 1, I'm not throwing Ursik unless the Royals have the lead. And my main thought for that is have the pitching matchup advantage in game 3. I mean, you have this Kramer kid who is fine. I mean, he has an ERA over 4, but he's still kind of young. Has one playoff start under his belt against Michael Waka, who is the 2013 NLCS MVP and has a ton of
Ton
experience.
of experience, yeah.
So, like, I'm going to trust that. Again, you want Ursik to get the save game and save 2, but I'm only throwing him I'm not throwing him if it's tied, because if you lose that game, he probably can't go in that game 3. So that's how I would manage it. I wouldn't push the envelope if you're up 1-0. I would wait for the perfect moment to use him, so that way, worst case scenario, you don't burn him and you have him from game 3 if you need him.
Yeah, I think I like that a lot, because what I don't want to see, that's what I was going to get into next, is the things that concern me about the Orioles and that switch hitting Santander. What I don't want to see is Brady Singer having to come out there in the 6th inning with a 1-run lead, gets a guy on, Santander comes up, and boom, there it goes over the right field wall, because he is certainly capable of doing that. And so that's the thing I think that concerns me the most. Gunnar Henderson, he's a stud. Adley Rutschman's a very good catcher, but I think that the bat that I circle in that lineup the most, that can cause the most damage to me, is Anthony Santander, because he's always one big swing away from a 2, 3, 4 run inning. And so he's the guy that I circle. So he's one, obviously, I don't want to see Brady pitch against him if we can. But yeah, what concerns you about this Orioles lineup the most? Because like we said, they are a pretty deep 1 through 9. They've got guys at almost every spot that can take advantage of you and cause some damage.
Yeah, the depth, the length of it. They got a lot of lefties, which actually plays into the Royals because I think if you ask fans today, what relievers they trust the most, like Boobin, Long, or in that top three, and Zerpa. Like I don't know if all fans are there. I'm starting to be back there with how he's looked in the last 6, 7 appearances. So the fact that they have so many lefties is scary for a guy like um, Lugo. It's scary to see Brady come in. I don't know if we'll see Brady at all. Like I know he's going to be on the
Yeah.
roster because how rude would it be to put a guy made 32 starts as a 3.70 ERA and is one of your guys, is your second oldest tenured player, and not him on the playoff roster? Like that's just a slap in the face. That I do not expect him to pitch unless one of the starters gets shelled and is out in the second inning. Like that's really the
Mhm.
only scenario because Jackson Holiday, Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric
They've
Mullins,
got so many lefty.
Anthony Santander, Adley, even though he doesn't hit righties as well, he's a switch hitter. Like the list goes on and on. I don't want Brady in that situation. The numbers just
Basically, their entire outfield hits lefty,
right. Yeah, yeah. So
except for Slater.
right, or left-handed hitters that can crush Brady. So I don't want to see Brady out there. That's what scares me the most is just the amount of power that those left-handed bats. Jordan Westburg is nice. He's a right-handed hitter. Urias, they're kind of Garrett Hampson type. Doesn't really scare me. James McCann, their backup catcher, doesn't really scare me. But like they're right-handed bats outside of a couple guys who don't bring fear as much. Not that they can't do damage, but man,
Yeah.
that's why I love having Reagan's going game one. It just if you can steal game one, then it opens up a lot of possibilities. And even though has a sub 1.5 ERA in September, again, you just gotta score. Hoping you just gotta score two, maybe three runs, and you got a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before in the season that this Royals team almost is better designed for a playoff run than a long regular season anyway. So you've got a lot of things going in your favor. So let's talk about, as we kind of wrap up here, let's talk about predictions for the series. And let's start with just percentage chance you have, or the percentage chance you give the Royals on coming out of this with a series victory and moving on to the AL divisional series.
Yeah, 50-50. But either they do or they don't, right? Isn't that how the saying goes? No, I'm just.
Yeah, that's the easy answer.
I don't know. I want to be really optimistic because I think there's a lot of reasons to be, and it comes down to Vinny. Like that's crazy that it's when you have a guy like Bobby and you have a guy like Salvi and you have the pitching staff you have. How does this random left-handed bat have so much carry on this series? But he really does. He's the heart. If
Mhm.
Salvi's the heartbeat and Vinny is the personality. I don't he's the second heartbeat. Like they got two heartbeats in this team. I don't know what it is, but Vinny is the guy everyone loves. Vinny, he's a productive. He's your only real left-handed power bat outside of Massey from time to time. So if Vinny plays, I actually like the Royals in this series just because of the confidence boost it's going to give this team. If Vinny goes out, and again, no, we weren't expecting him to play, so it's not fair to him to like force himself in if any, for good and reasonable health reasons. Like we know he's only gonna not be in there if he physically can't be.
Yeah.
I think it swings to the Orioles just because of how deep that lineup is. It's a lot easier for them to run into a mistake and make them pay than it is for the Royals. I don't. I love Kyle Isbell. I don't expect him to run into a hung slider as often as maybe a Colton Cowser. They're depth guys. So like that's the difference for me. I think the Royals have the advantage in starting pitching. I think it's about a wash in the bullpen, but the lineup is just too drastic without any for me to
Yeah.
really be confident overall.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you mentioned earlier that I think should show up at some point in this series is the fact that I think Baltimore's got a lot more pressure. Like you said, coming off of a 100-win season last year, getting all the way there, and they were, right there, ready to take the uh, ALCS, and then just completely fell apart. And they come and have another really really good season, but they give away the division in the month of August and September. So I think they have a lot more pressure. I mean, the Royals have nothing to lose. No
Yeah,
one expected them to be here. No, they're in all honesty, for most people, probably a year or two ahead of schedule in some regard. So what do they have to lose? I mean, they should be playing free. And I think now that with the way this roster is constructed, you actually have a lot of playoff experience on this roster now. Whereas the Orioles don't. I mean, yes, they have a lot of the guys that went through that last year, but I'm talking about guys that have won at the
Right.
highest level in this playoff. And even though some of these guys aren't going to be on the active roster, you look to some of the guys that are going to be in the dugout, the Will Smith, the Chris Stratton, who, they're not going to be here for this, but they've been part of a World Series winning team. You've got a guy like Yuli Gurriel who's been there, done that. Renfro's played some playoff baseball. Fam's played playoff baseball. So you look around the diamond, you've got a lot of experience. And of course, now you get Salvi another shot here towards the latter half of his career to go back out there and do it again. So I think we're going to be really motivated. Not that Baltimore won't, but I feel like the Royals are going to be able to play a little freer. Like to me, this kind of feels like what that Astros series was, where Correa bobbles it, kicks it off his foot, and you're going to see things like that pop up because they're playing with pressure.
Yeah.
Whereas the Royals should be able to play free. So I think I feel pretty good about this. A 3-game series. I think that's another interesting thing about baseball playoffs in regards to some other ones. A 3-game series to start, you just got to go out and win 2, and you start by winning the first one. And I think the Royals are one of the better teams in baseball that have that one day at a time mindset. I mean, Q talks about it every single game that, hey, can't control what happened yesterday. We're focused on the 9 innings we have today, and we're focused on that next pitch. So I like the edge there. I feel pretty good with this matchup. Well, give me 1 to 2 to 3 things that have to go right for the Royals to come out on top of this series.
Reagan's has to have a quality start. Like, again, game one is so important if they're going to take it. I really don't like their chances if they drop game one. You have to win 2 in Baltimore with, a little bit of the monkey off the 8-game playoff losing streak over in Baltimore. I just don't know if that's possible. So Reagan's, you gotta get quality start. 6 innings under 3 runs. Like, um, Bobby has to produce. Like, again, he doesn't have to be hitting homers, but he has to be a problem. He has to be a guy that's in the middle of everything, whether he's getting runners in scoring position, stealing bases. Like, Bobby, you have to have your stars produce. And then finally, I need a lefty to step up. Whether that's Vinny because he's in the lineup, great. That's an easy answer. But if it's not, then MJ or Massey's gonna need to have a big hit. I know Massey hit a big 3-run homer to really make this series possible today. I need more in the playoffs from a left-handed bat. So those are kind of my 3 keys to winning this series. Is you got to get game one, and the only way you're going to do that is if Reagan's goes deep.
Yep, I agree. You got to lean into your strengths, let your starting pitching carry you, let your stars go out and do the job. I think for me, the other thing I'm looking at is just outfield production.
Yeah.
Can you get 2 of the 3 to can the 9 to 12 at bats we'll see from those 3, can they manage to get 3 to 4 hits a game? That might still be asking for a lot. I don't know. But can Tommy Pham or Hunter Renfroe make an impact in this game? And if it's not them, is it MJ Melendez coming up with big? So I think that's where I'm looking at. You're going to get solid defense with Kyle Isbell. And if he gets on base, he's probably scoring because of the guys coming up after him. Yeah, I think that's where I'm looking is outfield production. Can they make an impact? And I think the other guy too is Maikel Garcia. He's a versatile defender. You know how strong his glove is defensively, his base running skills. He's got to find a way to get on base. Doesn't mean he's got to hit the ball, but he's got to get on base and make an impact there because we invested a lot of time in the first half of the season of him being a high priority in the top half of the offense until he just proved he couldn't do it. So can he, this is a clean slate. This is a whole new season now. That batting average is 0-0-0. So he's got one game in front of him to get back going. So I think those are my guys that I'm looking at because Salvi's going to come out and represent. Bobby's going to play well. And I think you feel good with some of those veterans. But yeah, can a couple of those guys just step up and make a difference? And I think if they do, we're probably sitting here come Thursday, Friday, and talking about the Royals. Looking to see who they play in the ALDS.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's all I got on this one. You got any other final thoughts ahead of playoff baseball?
No, I'm just already jittery, man. Ready for it to get here.
10 years. It's been nearly 10 years since the Royals have found themselves in this position. First time, of course, for us here on the podcast talking about playoff baseball for a team we represent. So that's super exciting. I don't know, how much we'll have coverage during the playoffs as a whole, but I'm sure if the Royals win, we'll be having a couple more episodes talking about prepping for the ALDS. And if the Royals do somehow drop this series, then we'll have a full full episode to recap the season that was. So make sure you guys are staying locked in. Subscribe to the podcast over here on the YouTube channel at KCSA Pod or KC Sports Authority. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias at KCSA Pod. That'll do it for this one. Everyone, it's fall, it's football season, but man, we got October baseball here in little over 24 hours, and could not be more excited for it. That the boys in blue are in a position to go out and do some magical things that they did nearly 10 years ago. So let's cheer them on and hope they get there. And that'll do it for this one. We will catch you guys in the next episode.